In this video, you'll learn basic GED math skills that will help you develop a stronger foundation to make learning other GED math concepts a lot easier for you. And we're also going to look at some common mistakes and how to avoid them. So first, it's important to start with place values. So I've put an example of a big number on the screen here, and I want you to see that the 2 is in the ones place, the 6 is in the tens place, 4 is in the hundreds place, 3 is in the thousands, 8 is in the 10,000s, 9 is in the 100,000s, and 1 is in the millions. So to test yourself on how well you understand how to identify place values, here's an example for you. Which digit from the following number corresponds to the given place value? 4,791. So I'd like you to tell me which of these numbers is in the hundreds place, which is in the thousands, which is in the ones, and which is in the tens. So pause the video, try this out, and then we'll go over it. Okay, so in this example, 7 is in the hundreds, 4 is in the thousands, 1 is in the ones, and 9 is in the tens. Okay, so the next basic skill is comparing and ordering numbers. So we're going to jump right into this with an example here. So I've given you some numbers here, as you can see, and I'd like you to pause the video and try to place the following numbers in order from the least to the greatest. So go ahead, try this now, and we'll go over it. Basically, the way most math books teach this is they want you to group the numbers by the digits, right? So fewer digits means a smaller number, and more digits means a bigger number. So basically, the way you would do this is you would say, well, 5 is a one-digit number, and 12 and 78 are both two-digit numbers, and 600, 513, and 523 are all three-digit numbers. So that would be the first step. If you want to do the textbook method here, you organize them by the number of digits. Okay, and then you want to say for the numbers with the same number of digits, you want to compare each place value going left to right. So let's look at 12 versus 78. We want to go left to right here. So we'll look at 1 versus 7. Okay, 1 is smaller than 7, so therefore 12 must be a smaller number than 78. So that's one way to do this. Now we can do the same thing with 600, 513, and 523. We go left to right, and so going left to right means we would look at the 6 first, and the 5, and the 5. All right, so 6 is a bigger number than 5, so therefore 600 is the biggest number here. Now, when it comes to 513 and 523, we see with the first digit here, there's a tie. So therefore, we must go to the next digit. All right, so we would compare 1 versus 2. All right, 1 is a smaller number, 2 is a bigger number. Therefore, 523 is bigger than 513. All right, so the final answer here, if we go from least to greatest, would be 5, 12, 78, 513, 523, and then 600. Okay, so another skill that a lot of students actually have trouble with is rounding. And so here's my explanation for you here. And once you see some examples, which we'll go through, this wording on the screen will probably make some more sense. But a step-by-step way to approach it would be to first identify the place value that you're being asked about. Then you want to look at the value to the right of it. And if it's a 5 or higher, you're going to look at that number from step 1 and you're going to increase it by 1. In other words, you're going to round it up. Now, if that number is less than 5, keep the number from step 1 the same. And the last step is to change all of the digits to the right of the number in step 1 to zeros. Now, I know if you're just looking at the wording, it can be a little confusing to know what I'm talking about. So we're going to jump in to an example here. So I'd like you to pause the video, try to round 54 to the nearest 10. Okay, so hopefully you had a chance to try this. Let me go over how you would do this. So the first step again is you want to say it's asking me about the nearest 10. So you need to find the number in the tens place. So here, 5 is in the tens place. So next we want to look at the number to the right of that. So 5 is in the tens place. The number to the right of it is 4. So we want to ask, is this number 5 or smaller? Well, 4 is smaller than 5. So all we have to do is we're going to look at this 5 again, the number in the tens place. We're going to leave that exactly the same. and we're going to turn this 4 into a 0. So the answer to this is 50. So now I'd like you to try to do this with 79, okay? So round 79 to the nearest 10. Pause the video, try it out, and then we'll go over it. Okay, so in this case here, again, it's asking us about the nearest 10. So the first thing I'd like you to do, look at the number. We see 9 is in the ones place, 7 is in the tens place. The question's asking us about the tens, so we want to focus on the 7. Now we want to look to the number directly to the right of it. So we want to look at this 9 here. Now this is a number that is 5 or greater, right? 9 is greater than 5. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our 7, and we're going to bump it up by 1. So we're going to take this 7, we're going to bump it up to 8, and we're going to turn this 9 into a 0. All right, so the answer is 80. Okay, next example here. So round 1,484 to the nearest 100. Pause the video, give it a try. If you get stuck, don't worry, we'll go over it. Okay, so I'm going to assume that you had a chance to try this by now, and we're going to round this to the nearest 100. So what we want to do here, again, since it's asking us to round to the nearest 100, pick out the number in the hundreds place. So 4 is in the ones, 8 is in the tens, 4 is in the hundreds. So we start there. And now the next step is we want to look to the number to the right, which is 8. We want to ask ourselves, is this a number smaller than 5, or is it a 5 or greater? Well, 8 is a greater number than 5, right? So what we want to do is we're going to have to round up. So all we do is we're going to go back to the 4, and we're going to bump that up to a 5. Then the last step is we're going to make everything to the right of that 5 zeros. So 8 gets replaced with a 0, 4 gets replaced with a 0 here, and so the answer is 1,500. Okay, another example here. So round 54,699 to the nearest 10,000. So in this case, we're going to find the 10,000s place to start off with, right? So we go ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s. So we want to zero in on this 5. Now look directly to the right of it, and that's a 4. Okay. So what we want to do here is we want to think, is this a number that's less than 5, or is it a 5 or greater? Well, 4 is obviously less than 5. All right, so we go back at the 5, and we know we don't have to change the 5. We're not going to bump that 5 up. We're going to leave 5 the same, and we're going to go in, and everything else gets changed to a 0. So 4 becomes a 0, so does everything else to the right of the 4. So the final answer would be 50,000. All right, so now this question here, I want you to ignore the 8 here. We're switching gears a little bit. This says number 8 because I took this out of some practice problems I put together a few years ago. So ignore the number 8 here. But I'd like you to pause the video here. This is going to kind of test you on how well you can read symbols. And I just would like you to try to figure this out. And then, of course, we'll go over it. So answer, which of the following is false? Okay, hopefully you had a chance to try this. So basically, the answer here is E, none of the above. And really, all I want you to see here is that if you ever see something that looks like this, 12 is greater than 4, I'd want you to know that the way that you would read that would be 12 is greater than 4. And if you just saw 88 and you saw this symbol here in the 9, I would want you to know that you would translate that and you would read it as 88 is not equal to 9, all right, and so on and so forth. So this is actually a written explanation I did. If you'd like to pause the video and you can spend some time reading this or maybe jot it down in your notes. My phone's going off. Okay, so the next concept here is one of the most important things for the whole GED test. But really the concept here is if I gave you an example question like this, 5 minus 1 squared plus 7, how would you know what to start with? Do you start by trying to add 7? Do you start by squaring something? Do you start by doing 5 minus 1? Well, in order to know how to start a question like this, we would just follow the rules here in order, right? So whenever you're solving a question like this, you just go right down through your list here. So I'd like you to pause the video, just try to solve this one out here, and I'd like to see what answer you come up with, and then we'll go over it. Okay, so the idea here is you just run down through your PEMDAS here, right? So we would want to start with what's inside of our parentheses, okay? So the P stands for parentheses. So we would do 5 minus 1. 5 minus 1 is 4, all right? So let me rewrite this here, and my handwriting can sometimes be hard to read. So I appreciate your patience here, but we've got 4 squared plus 7. All right, so now what do? Do we try to do an addition? Do we add our 7 here? Or do we square this? Well, we already took care of our parentheses. Now we would do anything with any exponents or square roots. So we don't have any square roots, but we do have this exponent right here. So 4 squared, that's the same as doing 4 times 4. And 4 times 4 is 16. All right, so let me rewrite this yet again, and we've got 16 plus 7. All right, this is a plus sign here. 16 plus 7. So now we've done the parentheses, we've done the exponents. So next we would want to check, do we have any multiplication? No, we don't. Do we have any division? No, we don't. Do we have any addition? Yes, we do. All right, so 16 plus 7 is 23. So the answer here is 23. So next I want to talk about word problems, and you're going to get a lot of word problems on the GED math, and so I want to help you maximize your score on those word problems. So I'm going to present a 5-step strategy to kind of give you a framework to approach word problems and hopefully get more right. And the 5-step strategy, you can sum it up in one word. That word is FIOS, F-I-O-S. So the F in FIOS stands for find. What is the question asking me to find? The I stands for info. What information am I given, and what information do I need to solve the question? The O stands for operation, addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division. You may also need to do more than one operation. And the S stands for 2 things. The S stands for solve. You want to solve the question, then always ask, does my answer make sense? So the operations again would be addition, which is to combine, subtraction, which is to find the difference, multiplication, which is to combine more than once, division is to break a number into equal-sized groups. So how do you know when to add, subtract, multiply, or divide? Well, oftentimes the word problems are going to give you keywords, which you'll see words within a question, and these can kind of be clues as to which operation to use, all right? So for addition, some keywords that could mean you need to add would be the word add, sum, altogether, total, increase, in all, or plus. Now for subtraction, less than, decrease, difference, left, or lost. All right, so as a quick tip here, the words more and than will be separated in some subtraction problems, all right? So just keep that in mind. Now for multiplication, some keywords would be times, total, as much, of, by, and twice. So as a quick tip, note that the word total could be a clue that you need to add, but it could also be a clue that you need to multiply. So you're going to have to still think critically here, and that goes for all these keywords here. These aren't magic bullets, these are just words that could indicate the operation, all right? But you still have to think critically, as always. And so for division, we have each, quotient, equal, equal pieces, and per. And for equals, we've got is and are. Okay, so next let's look at an example here. It says Jamie did 35 push-ups on Tuesday and 40 push-ups on Wednesday. How many push-ups did he do altogether? So I'd like you to pause the video and try this, but definitely when you try it, please try to use the FIOS approach. Find the F, the I, the O, solve it, ask if your answer makes sense. So go ahead and try that and we'll go over it. Okay, so using the FIOS approach here, what do we need to find? Well, the question is asking us how many push-ups, to find how many push-ups he did altogether. Next, we want to look at the information. So we're given the info that he did 35 push-ups on Tuesday and 40 on Wednesday. Next, we have to consider which operation or operations do we have to do. And the word altogether is a good clue that we are going to have to add. So we solve the question, we do 35 plus 40, that equals 75. So now we just want to think, does this make sense? We'll just think common sense here, right? If someone does 35 push-ups one day, they do 40 another day, does 75 seem about right if you added those together? I think it does. So I would say yes, it definitely makes sense. So next question here, and it looks like I already gave away the F here, so hopefully that makes it a little easier for you. But the example says, Katie did an equal number of push-ups every day for 10 days in a row. If Katie did 20 push-ups in total, how many did she do each day? So pause the video, try to figure this out. Try to use the FIOS approach here and we'll go over it. Okay, so I already spoiled the find here. So the question is asking you to find how many total number of push-ups she did in 10 days. So now we look at the info that we're given, and that's an equal number every day for 10 days, and that she did 200 in total. So how do we know what operations to use? Well, in this case, there's really three keywords here. We see the words equal and we see the words each, but we also see the word total. Now remember before I said total could be a keyword for addition or multiplication, but we also see the keywords equal and each, which are keywords that suggest division. So this is why you have to think critically and not just assume the word total means you have to add or multiply, all right? So thinking critically here, how do we do that? Well, we want to, again, go back to what do we need to find? The total number of push-ups she did in 10 days, all right? So hopefully you see that we need to divide here in order to solve the question. So we're going to do 200 divided by 10, and that equals 20. And we want to ask, does this seem about right? Without doing any math, does common sense say that that seems about right? I would say yes, that seems to make sense, all right? Okay, so the next skill that's really important is doing translations or basically writing equations. So you need to be able to look at something like this, 9 more than a number is 20. You need to be able to translate that into an equation. So I've given you two choices, A and B. It's a multiple choice question. And I'd like you to pick the proper equation for the statement, 9 more than a number is 20. So pause the video, try that out, and then we'll go over how to do it. Okay, so in this case here, what we have to think about is, since we don't know what the number is, we want to write a letter in its place. And we call this letter a variable or an unknown, two words for the same thing. So since we don't know what that number is, we're just going to put a random letter in to represent it. And so here we picked the letter B, or the multiple choice answers gave you the letter B, but it could have been A or X or Y or Z. Doesn't really matter, but the point here is it's telling you 9 more than a number is 20. So remember before I told you that is can be a keyword for an equal sign? Well, that's why we would put in the translation, we replace is with the equal sign, right? So is 20 equals 20, same thing. And it's 9 more than a number. So we take that number, we add 9 to it. We could have also written 9 plus B equals 20. B plus 9, that's the same as writing 9 plus B, but B is the correct answer here, so hopefully that makes sense. Okay, if you had trouble with that, that's more than okay. We're going to give you another shot at it here. This is a little different, but the same type of thing. I'd like you to choose the correct translation for the following. Jackie has more money than Zach. All right, so you can pause the video, try this out, and we'll go over it. Okay, so let's go over this now, and this is a little bit of a throwback to earlier in the video, right? So you would need to first recognize that this symbol here, this is a greater than sign. And remember I showed you that earlier in the video. And so now you would just have to think here, Jackie has more money than Zach. So in the answer choices here, you'd have to understand that they're replacing Jackie with the letter J, and Zach is being replaced by the letter Z. And we want to say Jackie has more than Zach. All right, so we want to pick the greater than sign. J is greater than Zach. Jackie's money is greater than Zach's money. Or Jackie has more money than Zach. However you want to think about it, but hopefully this makes sense to you that A is the correct answer here. Okay, so now we're going to switch it up a little bit, and I'd like you to do the same thing. Choose the correct translation for the following. Jeffrey has less money than Zach. So pause the video, give this a try, and then we'll go over it. Okay, so in this case here, now it's asking us Jeffrey has less money than Zach. So first of all, again, Jeffrey is replaced by J, Zach is replaced by Z, and we now need to understand that A, this would be read as Jeffrey has more money, or Jeffrey's money, the amount of money Jeffrey has is greater than the amount Zach has. This we could read as Jeffrey's amount of money is less than Zach's money. Basically, Jeffrey has less than Zach, and this is the less than sign here. So B is the correct answer. Okay, let's keep going here, and we'll get a little bit harder. Maybe it won't be a little bit harder, but try this out here again. Same thing, choose the correct translation. The statement is Erica and Kenny have a total of 8 pairs of sneakers. So does that translate to the equation for A or for B? Pause the video, try it out, and then we'll go over it. So here we would do E plus K equals 8, right? So we're doing total. So here we have to add, right? And so Erica's sneakers plus the amount Kenny has would be E plus K. We're told in total they have 8, so we would say equals 8. Okay, here's another example. Choose the correct translation for the following. So the difference between Sadie's savings and Carol's is 350. So pause the video, try this out, and as always, we'll go over it. Okay, so the correct answer here is B. We're asked to find the difference between Sadie's and Carol's. S minus C equals 350. Hopefully that makes sense for you. And here's another one. So the same thing, choose the correct translation. You've got A, B, C, D, and E. So in this case, I'd like you to figure out the translation for Ralph has 4 more t-shirts than David. So hopefully this will make you think a little bit more here. And if you get the question wrong, that's okay. The thought process is what's going to help you. So pause the video and then we'll go over it. So in this case, the answer is D. Both A or B could be the right answer here. Okay. So we're told Ralph has 4 more t-shirts than David. So one way you could write that is the amount of t-shirts Ralph has equals the amount that David has, or the number David has, plus 4. And we could also say that the number of t-shirts Ralph has minus the number that David has equals 4. Okay, so there's 2 different ways to translate this, all right? And so D is the correct answer. Okay, so here's another one now. Choose the correct translation for the following. Greg has twice as many DVDs as Sheena. You're given A, B, and C. Pause the video. It should go without saying now. Try this out and we'll go over it. Okay, so the correct answer here is A. So we're told Greg has twice as many as Sheena. So G equals 2S, right? Because it's told that he has twice as many as Sheena. Twice as many, that's like multiplying by 2. So G equals 2S. Okay, here we go again. And I know that we're spending a lot of time on this, but this is a really, really crucial skill. So I really want to make sure that you have a good foundation on this. So try this one too. Jake has half as many DVDs as Sheena. So you've got A or B. Which would be the correct translation? Pause the video, try it out. We'll go over it. Okay, so the correct answer here is A. All right, so Jack has half as many as Sheena. And so the word half, that's the same as dividing by 2. Okay. Multiplying a number by half or dividing by 2, those are 2 ways of saying the same thing. But basically, Jake, the amount that he has is equal to what Sheena has divided by 2, or half of what Sheena has. So we've already been talking about equations here and writing equations, but now let's really talk about equations and how to solve them and what they really are, because this is another really, really, really important skill for the GED. So basically, all an equation is, it's a statement that 2 mathematical expressions are equal. So here we have an example. We have x plus 4 equals 10. And so basically what we're saying here is that in this example, x plus 4, that value is equal to 10, and we see that equations may contain 1 or more variables. I mentioned this previously in the video, but repetition is always helpful. A variable is a symbol that we use to represent an unknown value. All right, so that's why we have an x here. So how do we solve equations? Well, to solve an equation, you have to get the variable by itself on one side of the equation. So in other words, you must isolate that variable. That's always a strategy, all right? And how do you do this? Well, you isolate that variable by doing the inverse, which is a fancy word for opposite, operation. Okay, so here's what I mean by inverse, all right? So the inverse of addition is subtraction. The inverse of subtraction is addition. The inverse of multiplication is division. And the inverse of division is multiplication, all right? So I'd like you to remember that. But the key here, whenever you're solving equations, is that whatever you do on one side of the equation, you always, always, always have to do it on the other side. Okay, so here's a really basic example of an equation. And for some of you, this might seem easy. For some people, this might be the first time you've seen this. But I'd like you to follow the steps I outlined, and how would you solve this equation here? X plus 4 equals 10. So pause the video, try it out, and then we'll go over it. Okay, so for solving an equation here, here's how you would do it. So remember, the goal is to isolate the variable, all right? Our variable is the x. We want to get it by itself on one side of the equation, all right? So the way we do that is we want to look at the 4 here. So this says x plus 4. So we want to get rid of that 4 by doing the inverse operation. So if it's x plus 4, we know that we want to do subtraction. So we want to subtract 4 from each side of the equation, because whatever you do on one side, you always have to do it on the other. So we would then rewrite this as x equals what? Well, it's 10 minus 4, which equals 6. So the answer here would be x equals 6. Okay, so the next example of solving an equation here is 4x equals 20. Pause the video, try to figure this out, and we'll go over it. Okay, so what you need to understand here is whenever you see a 4x, all right, or 4a, whatever they pick as a variable, here I picked x, but that's the same as saying 4 times x. And when you're solving an equation, the goal is to get the x, or whatever the variable is, by itself on one side of the equation. All right, so since it's 4 times x, we want to do the opposite of multiplication, which is division. So we're going to divide by 4 to get rid of the 4 on this side. And whatever we do to one side, we always have to do it to the other two. All right, so 4 divided by 4 is just 1. So these are going to cancel out, all right? And it's really 1 times x, but there's no need to write the 1 there. So on this side, what's 20 divided by 4? Well, 20 divided by 4 equals 5. So the answer here is x equals 5. Okay, here's another example here. We have 3a plus 12 equals 42. So pause the video, try this out, and as always, we'll go over it. Okay, so this one's a little bit trickier, but basically what you need to do here whenever you see a solving equations example like this is just remember the goal is to get the a by itself on one side of the equation here, all right? So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to clear out the 12. So it's 3a plus 12, all right? So to get rid of the 12, all right, it's plus 12, so we need to do the opposite operation or the inverse operation, which is subtraction. So the first thing we would do is subtract 12 from both sides of the equation. And so if we rewrite this, and pardon my handwriting here, we would have 3a equals 30. All right, so we've dealt with that 12. The question is now 3a equals 30. So remember, this is similar to the last example we did. 3a, that's the same as 3 times a, or it is 3 times a. So we want to do the opposite operation here. So the opposite operation of multiplication is division. So we want to divide by 3 here, all right? But remember, whatever you do to one side, you also have to do to the other side. So we want to divide 30 by 3 as well. All right, 3 divided by 3 is going to cancel out. 30 divided by 3 equals 10. So the final solution here would be a equals 10. All right, so now let's look at some common mistakes that test takers make. And if you've made any of these before, I'm not picking on you here. Don't feel bad. I just want you to know so that you can get a better score and move forward, hopefully pass the GED faster. So a common mistake, one, would be confusing a unit of measurement with a variable. So for example, some test takers would see Jade bought 8 m of rope, and the m here stands for meters, right? Just like in this example, Jade bought 8 centimeters of rope, or Jade bought 8 inches of rope. But the mistake would be thinking that this m here represents a variable. So some people, they would say Jade bought 8 m of rope, and they would think that this means m multiplied by 8, or that this would represent 8 times c times m, or that this would be 8 times I times n. But really, all these are abbreviations. So just be careful that you don't confuse these abbreviations as variables when really they're just representing units of measurement. So another common mistake would be thinking that a letter always has the same value. So let me explain what I mean here. So let's say you get a question that says solve the expression when x equals 9. So let's say you were given this x plus 11 equals blank. Well, how would you solve a question like this? Well, what you would do here is you would take the 9 and you would replace the x with the 9. So 9 plus 11 equals 20. So some students might get a question like this where it says solve the expression when x equals 9. and then throughout the entire test, every time they saw an x, they would assume that it equals 9. And that would be a mistake, all right? So you probably won't get a question that's this simple on the test, but my point here is that, you know, if one question tells you that x equals 9, don't assume that every time you see x on the whole test, x always equals 9, because that's most likely not going to be true. Okay, so third mistake would be looking for some kind of secret code for which number a letter represents. So for example, let's say you got a question that said, solve the expression for a when 15a equals 30. So some students would look at this and they would think, well, a is the first letter of the alphabet, so therefore a must equal 1. Or if it was b, they would say, well, b is the second letter in the alphabet, so b must equal 2. All right, and so this is incorrect, so just be careful. Don't try to look for secret codes or anything like that throughout the test. All right, if you're stuck on a question and you don't know how to solve it, there's probably just a concept that you don't understand, and that's probably why you're having trouble with it, all right? Don't look for secret codes and things. Don't do that, because I want you to try to maximize your score. So if you find a question you can't solve, go back to your textbooks or get on my YouTube videos or other videos and find that concept, fill in that gap, and you're going to be able to get those questions right in the future. So another very common mistake would be trying to add unlike terms. So I want you to think, if I gave you an example like this, 4h plus 6, okay? What would be the answer here? Well, this is really a trick question because you can't add 4h and 6. All right, some people would think 4h plus 6 equals 10h. And if that's what you were thinking here, don't feel bad, but I just want you to know so you maximize your score in the future, that's actually would not be correct, all right? Now, if the question was 4h plus 6h, then the answer yes would be 10h. But if you just have 4h plus 6, you can't add that because 4h and 6, they're not like terms. So to illustrate what I mean, here's another example, and I'd like you to actually pause the video, and I'd want you to try to simplify the following here. So you've got 2a plus 7 plus 3a plus b, plus 8b. So I'd like you to pause the video, try to simplify the following question here, keeping like terms in mind, and I just want you to test yourself and just see if you really understand what I mean by like terms. And if not, that's okay too. You're going to learn. Hopefully you had a chance to try this question out. The answer would be 5a plus 7 plus 8b, and that's all you can do, right? So what I want you to see here is that if you've got 2a, you can't add that to 7, but you can do 2a plus 3a. You just do 2 plus 3, which is 5, and you bring the a along for the ride, all right? And you can't add 3a to 8b. You can't add a term with an a to something with a b. All right, so this is all you could do, and the answer would just be 5a plus 7 plus 8b. Okay, the next mistake would be being confused when answer choices have letters and or operations in them. So, and here I've given you the answer here, but basically, if I gave you something like this and said simplify the following, some test takers might be confused if you see multiple choice answers and the answer choice would be 5a plus 7 plus 8b. Because some people would see something like this, as I just said, and they would think, well, there's still more work to be done. There's letters and there's addition signs. And so a common mistake would be not realizing that we can't do any more addition here, and that you might see answer choices that are just left like this, 5a plus 7 plus 8b. So don't be thrown off or confused if you see answer choices that still have the letters or the operations in them. Not everything's going to come out with a nice even number. Sometimes you're just going to be left with a's and pluses and minuses, and that's okay. Another common mistake would be believing that letters represent objects when they don't. So as an example here, say you were to see a question that said, phones cost P dollars each and chargers cost C dollars each. If Wanda buys 2 phones and 2 chargers, what does 2P plus 2C represent? So I don't want you to solve this, I'm just showing you as an example here to see the mistake. Some people might think that 2P plus 2C represents 2 phones and 2 chargers, but really here, P represents the cost of 1 phone, and C just represents the cost of 1 charger. Thank you so much for watching. Next, I recommend checking out my other GED math videos for more help on this. You can try a GED math practice quiz and really see where you're at, but I just wish you the best of luck. I hope that you and your families all take care of yourselves during the times we're in right now, and I just hope everything works out with the GED, that you can get it done, move on to the next phase of your life.